My name is Gerald Brown, and I'm currently 17 years old. I am the creator of this documentary, and the reason I created this documentary is to create a new perspective on police brutality, for police to see what they're doing to the community, and for the community to understand the psychology behind police brutality. People don't understand that there's a lot of psychology that goes behind a cop pulling up to a scene and just shooting someone. That's not normal, you know what I mean? So the documentary is to create a new perspective and hopefully work things out.
I move the laptop back and forth. I guess we put a notebook under it if really needed.
Yeah, this is a pretty good angle right here.
Cool.
Okay, what is your name?
My name is Officer Brian Erkeline.
Erkeline.
Yeah.
How long have you been an officer?
Over 4 years.
Over 4 years. What has been the hardest part of your job?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think finding the right place.
Finding the right
policing.
spot.
Yeah, because every agency you go to is different. Every assignment's different.
Yeah.
Co-workers, everything. And I kind of think everyone has a right place to be. So
Yeah,
it's
just
kind of like I found mine. But.
Would you say that civilian relations has a big role in that trust?
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
got to.
What are some highlights to being an officer?
Probably some of the stuff you see on TV. It's not always like that. You drive around and do pretty exciting, interesting things. But then really, to me, getting to investigate and use my brain and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
that's not really great TV, but
yeah,
it's very interesting, satisfying.
realistic.
Yeah.
Do you believe there is a stigma when it comes to mental illness in policing?
There can be, and that's on two different fronts. One is that officers deal with people who have mental illness, and I'm actually one of our mental health officers, so that's what I do a lot of.
Yeah.
But then I think, as we talked earlier, there also is a stigma, and I think that's probably more your interest, is officers with mental health problems, and then their access to assistance and things like that.
So you being a mental health officer, do you feel as if many officers don't want to come forward, or they're more hesitant to come forward?
I would agree, but I think a lot of it's just trust. We talked about police and citizen trust, and then officers are the same way. You trust some, you don't trust others, and then it's also an issue that could really impact your career.
Yeah.
You know, there are some conditions that don't get better, and you can try to hide them for a while, but eventually a department says, we can't have you employed here anymore because you're really unstable, and it's important.
Okay.
So,
what would you hope for this documentary to achieve with police officers with dealing with mental health issues?
I like where you're going with it, opening up sort of the conversation and getting some other perspectives. This is definitely a topic that's not really discussed as far as I know.
Yeah.
I think we go to the instant flashpoint headlines, and you get video and they look bad, and this is sort of separate from that, but it definitely is the human impact.
Exactly.
Perhaps a career field and whatnot on people.
All right.
So it's pretty cool.
Do you believe PTSD has contributed to the amount of shootings?
I really wouldn't know to say either way. I hadn't thought about that.
Okay. What are some things you want the public to know about your job?
Well, it's not a lot like what you see on TV,
Mm-hmm.
by and large, and I think it actually takes a bigger toll on people than I think even officers realize. You don't realize until years later, when after all the dead bodies and the violence and the threats and all these things and just bad interactions, that I think you kind of take a look back and go, wait a minute, I went through all this.
Yeah.
So.
How do you think we will put an end to the civilian and officer conflicts?
I'm sorry, I had the radio going.
Oh, how do you think we will put an end to the officer and civilian conflicts, like the tension?
Well, it seems like people like you, really, people who are trying to bridge the gaps and start talking to everybody, stakeholders, if you will. In Texas, there are some educational efforts going on. I think you might have taken the class, the kind of driver, police contact kind of class. It's coming.
It's coming.
And then conversely, we receive training too. Like here, we're state of Texas is how we want you all as peace officers to talk to citizens. And I think by and large, most people already get that. We kind of roll our eyes, but a little more training doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Okay, this is like the did you know part of it. Okay. I already told you some of the facts that I introduced you to earlier. 1 in 4 officers has suicidal thoughts. The suicide rate of officers is 4 times higher than firefighters. More officers died from suicide than in the line of duty in 2017. The smallest departments, their suicide rates jump up another 4 times. Law enforcement suicide is an overall global issue. It's not just going on in America or, countries we think about whenever we think about police officers. It's a globalized issue.
Okay, and that is something I definitely didn't know about.
Yeah, going through that PTSD and you might not correlate it to PTSD or stress of the job, but it's just like it's happening everywhere,
Mm-hmm. And it makes sense. If it is job-related kind of stress and PTSD, then that works.
1 in 4 1 in 4 officers on the street deals with drug abuse issues. Now, it could be more, it could be less, because of course you're an officer. You wouldn't want to exactly say, okay, I'm dealing with alcohol abuse or drug abuse. It's been recorded that substance abuse disorders among officers is estimated to range between 20 and 30% compared to the general population, which is under 10%. Now, I want to ask you to just, I don't know, what would you like to say? Like, if I'm putting this out there, what would you like to say to people that are seeing this?
About all those numbers?
All of those numbers, how you feel about, what's going on with civilians and officers, an officer's viewpoint of what's going on, or point of view?
Well, that's pretty big. I will say some of those numbers are not exactly new. We've been getting other trainings that have definitely keyed in on those, and then there's a big push within law enforcement to address the suicidal ideation and mental health. And a lot of departments either have in-house counseling, or they kind of contract with someone in the community to come in and do those kind of services. So I think the problem is being recognized, and we might be behind the ball a little bit, but I think we're definitely catching up and really working hard to make things happen. And then even some of the departments I've been with, we have what is called peer support. And those are officers who basically elect to go through special training. And then maybe if a different officer goes to their supervisor and says, hey, I want to talk to somebody about this, that, or whatever, they kind of get referred to the peer support people, and we get to maybe triage whatever's going on and help someone work through whatever it is that they're facing. So
that's fantastic, because in many places they have, or it's been said that there's like a suck it up attitude in a lot of departments.
And that's, there are some people that have that, but even in our broader society it's the same way.
Yeah.
You start talking about depression and bipolar and all kinds of stuff, and there's always those people who's like, well, it's not a thing, just suck it up and move on. But I think most of us realize it's an actual problem, and people can work through it and get treatment, but you kind of got to start there at least in acknowledging it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this interview.
Well, Gerald, thank you. I really appreciate it, man.
What is your name?
Sam Wilson, officer at Pflugerville ISD Police Department.
How long have you been an officer?
Over 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
What has been the hardest part of your job?
Hardest part of my job, dealing with different personalities, I would say, from the public and other officers.
Okay. What are some highlights of being an officer?
Building relationships with kids.
Okay, that's awesome. Do you believe there is a stigma when it comes to mental illnesses in policing?
I haven't been aware of one, but I'm sure there's some type of stigma out there.
What is your perception of productivity goals?
Can you rephrase that one?
Or what are productivity goals?
That sounds like a business question.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Like what do you mean by productivity goals?
Okay, well, whenever you look online and you're like, okay, so I was doing my research on what could be causing certain stresses for police officers. And one of the things that kept coming up was like productivity goals and how they switched from quotas, and it could possibly be in some departments they say productivity goals are more stressful than actual quotas.
Okay, so in our department we don't have those. We don't have quotas, quote unquote. In Texas, it's actually illegal to have quotas. You're just supposed to just do your job. You're not supposed to go out and say, I'm going to arrest 3 people today. I'm going to make 4 tickets. You can't do that. That's not ethical.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Gerald, you do have a good point. I hate to interrupt Sam's.
Oh, you're fine.
But there is a lot of stress placed on officers from administration right now, and that for various reasons. But
yeah, I'm sure it happens, but I haven't worked at a department that forces officers to go out and do certain things every day.
Yeah,
we don't have those at all.
Okay, that's good to hear in this area. Do you believe PTSD has contributed to the amount of shootings?
In some cases, maybe. There may be officers who have experienced a shootout before, and the next time they're in a similar situation, they may react a little bit differently based on what happened to them in the past. There are a lot of officers who are ex-military as well. I can't speak on them because I don't know what's going on, but that could be a factor as well.
I completely agree with that. What are some things you want the public to know about your job?
We are people too. We're humans too. We make mistakes, and that's just how it is. We try to do our job the right way, but we do make mistakes.
How do you think we will come to peace with civilians and officers? Or how will we end this tension between officers?
By doing what we're doing right now, by talking, trying to understand, trying to understand each other. Not by, going out and thinking that all officers are bad, because I can't say all civilians are bad either, because that wouldn't be true. Are there bad civilians out there? Yes, but that one bad apple doesn't speak for all the rest of the good people out there.
Exactly. All right, now I'm going to do the did you know portion of this, where we're just saying certain things that I've seen. 1 in 4 officers has suicidal thoughts. Suicide rate of officers is 4 times higher than firefighters. More officers died in 2017 due to suicide than in actual line of duty. Law enforcement suicide is an actual global issue. It's not just going on in America. 1 in 4 on-street officers struggles with alcohol or drug abuse issues. Substance use disorders among officers is estimated to be 20 to 30% compared to the under 10% in the general population. How do these statistics make you feel?
Some of these I already knew. I've worked with officers who have committed suicide. I've known officers who have. So I was aware of that. The alcoholism, I've known officers that have struggled with alcoholism. Our agencies have tried, not this current agency, but the agency that I used to work for, they have peer support, which is, you get support that you need to try to get out of those bad habits and everything. So the help is there. You just have to be willing to accept that you need help. All officers, sometimes you don't know that you're in a place where you need help, and maybe it becomes too late. But officers are humans just like everybody else. We go home and we have families and everything. So sometimes, sadly, that's just the escape from what's going on in their lives.
Definitely. I feel as if a lot of officers are struggling in silence, it seems like. Because it's just like the public is like, that's an officer. They don't see officers as human beings,
Right.
And it's like, they're just held at a certain
higher
level,
standard.
A higher standard. So it's like, this person shouldn't deal with this.
Right. But that's still a person, though. He was made just like you are.
Exactly.
We're made out of the same material. So if regular civilians can deal with alcohol, can suffer from alcoholism, then officers can too, because at the end of the day, we're people too.
Exactly. Would you like to say anything to, just leave your mark on the documentary, or would you like to, just voice your opinion about anything?
Well, I just like where you're going with this, starting a discussion, and I just hope you continue on with it. I wish you luck in your work.
Well, thank you so much.
All right.
All right. What is your name?
Crystal Hellenberg.
Crystal Hellenberg. How long have you been an officer?
I started in 2001, so 17 years, I'm sorry.
What has been the hardest part of your job?
So I used to work the streets in Houston, and there was a few fatalities and suicides that I saw.
Okay.
And it's like every time that you think about it, it's like fresh. I mean, if you remember it, like I can remember everything still.
Wow.
But seeing the little kids in an accident like that is very. At the time I had a small son or a young son, and there was a small child, and so it was just heartbreaking. But
sorry to hear that. How much would you say civilian relations play a role in that stress?
Play a role in the trust?
In the stress.
Oh, in distress?
Yeah, of the job.
I want to. That's hard to say for me because I don't think it's more of the civilian. I think it's more of what they see on TV, like news-wise and stuff. That not to say that they haven't had bad experiences, but maybe the news isn't always the whole story. They're there to get ratings.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I mean, I can understand why civilians can be that way, and as an officer, we just have to go with the flow. I mean, you don't know what their back history is.
Yeah.
So, I was always taught be respectful to people, and
hope for the best.
Yes.
What are some of the highlights of being an officer?
I can tell you when I was very small, like in elementary, I saw an HPD officer go by, and I was like, oh, I could do that all day, just drive around. But no, helping people, I know that's the first thing that comes out of a lot of people's mouths, but it is. You truly get to help people. And there are things that when you do help people, that you don't understand the people that you're helping, why they go back to certain situations.
Yeah.
It takes you a while to learn why they go back, because sometimes you get upset, you respond to a call and you see someone hurt by someone else and you wonder why they keep going back, things like that. But I can tell you, working in the schools these past 6 years has been the most rewarding.
Really?
Yes. I knew I always wanted to work with juveniles, but y'all have taught me how to be a better parent, a better officer, and it's just, I don't know, I guess the way I grew up, I can relate to a lot of students, and so it's been great. That's the most rewarding is, having the kids come back and, like years later and tell you, thank you, or they still remember you at least,
Yeah.
So.
All right, we're going to get into the questioning now. Do you believe there is a stigma when it comes to mental illness in policing?
I think it's growing more now.
Like the stigma is getting worse?
Either it's getting worse or they're just publicizing it more. An officer, I don't know if they publicize it on the news as much as like we get. Law enforcement will get notification of when there's a officer that is killed in the line of duty or taken their own life or something like that.
Yeah. But
I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
Oh, you're good. It's an interview.
But it can play a big role because of what you see, and I don't know, I think that things are just getting it's hard for people to talk to people.
Yeah.
So, the more and more that an officer sees,
The harder and harder he gets to talk.
it is.
Okay. Do you believe that PTSD has contributed to many of the shootings?
It's hard to answer that question, because you go in. I mean, maybe if they were ex-military, I don't even want to say that because I'm not in the person's shoes to know what's going through their mind. But I know that no officer wants to take anybody's life.
Yeah.
But I think that I think there are a lot of people that have PTSD that aren't diagnosed with it in law enforcement that possibly, we need more resources for that.
Yeah.
And more education, more training on that. As well as, it's just hard for me to answer that question. I'm not in that, in whatever officer's shoes that would do that. But there could be numerous things.
Yeah. Okay. What are some things you want the public to know about your job?
That we are human too. I mean, there are some not so good officers out there, and those officers should not be officers.
Yeah.
But there are really good officers out there that really want to help people, and the way I see it, or like when I talk to some kids in the past years or whatnot, it's like, they ask questions about, well, they heard something on the news, this officer did this, or there was a shooting here, shooting there, and I'm like, okay, well, let me be a civilian and you're the officer. What we get through our dispatch is what a witness may be seeing driving by.
Yeah.
They may see a group of kids or adults, looking like they're gonna fight, and they may mistake a cell phone for a weapon.
Yeah.
And then that's what gets reported to dispatch by some person driving by. And so the officers are responding to what they get, and then when they get out there, there may be some people that have had some bad run-ins with the police, so they're very defensive from the get-go.
Yeah.
But that's just expected, and the officers need to be respectful. I've always had it, I've had it where they've been right off the bat argumentative, and you have to get your scene under control, but you try to remain respectful, and it always seems to calm down, and
Eventually.
but just for them to see the other side, that they're the officer, they have a wife or a husband and children, or a mom that they have to take care of, or a dad, and they want to go home to that person. And if you're telling that person, let me see your hands, and that's the main thing you'll hear out of officers, is just let me see your hands. And the only reason why is so that we know you can only do, you do stuff with your hands, and as long as we see your hands, we're good. But I ask them when I flip it, I'm like, what would you do if I don't give you my hands? What's the reason for me not giving you my hands?
Yeah, like why are you hiding your hands so much? How do you think the civilian and officer tension will come to an end?
I think that, there's always going to be the media. And I go back to the media just because I've taken some classes, investigative classes, where they showed us an actual footage of an interview with somebody, and how the news took it and chopped it, and then just put what they wanted in there, and it wasn't exactly
what had happened. Okay.
And so I don't know, I guess more meetings with the public, more outings with the public. Like I know that Pflugerville has coffee with an officer, things like that.
Yeah, Pflugerville was really good with that.
So working in the schools, I get to meet, you know, the kids, their parents, brothers, whatever, sisters, and you know, even little ones before they even get to school, and then when they're in school, they're like, I remember you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just more interaction together in a positive way.
Definitely. Alright, now I'm gonna get into like the facts and did you know? 1 in 4 officers has suicidal thoughts. Suicide rate of officers is 4 times higher than it is in firefighters. More officers died from suicide than in the line of duty in 2017. In the smallest departments, suicide rates jump up another 4 times. Law enforcement suicide is an overall global issue. It's not just happening in America. It's estimated 1 in 4 on-street officers suffer with alcohol or drug abuse issues. Substance use disorders among officers is estimated to range between 20 and 30% compared to the under 10% in the general population.
Oh, I didn't know that.
How do you...
That's... I mean, I knew there was, or I was hearing more of this, you know, of suicide and things like that, but I didn't know it was
that bad.
And I guess, you know, the officers are supposed to be the fixers or the protectors, and they don't know how to let their guard down. I mean, I say they. We all have traumatic experiences, even growing up as a child. And, you know, it's all about how you cope with them. And like you said, some officers will drugs and alcohol. But I think there needs to be more education, more training, more of the officers knowing, like as a kid, when you go through things, you're like, oh my gosh, is this only happening to me and no one else?
Yeah.
So if there was more of how, you know, knowing that, hey, this other officer's feeling this way too, or this other officer, the same scene that y'all went to is dealing with the same thing.
Exactly.
And, you know, to be able to know that it's not just you feeling that way might be able to help them open up and talk and learn coping skills instead of taking their own lives. Or going, you know, reverting to drugs or alcohol. Because I'm just, I don't know, they have, you know, there's a lot of officers that have the wives and the children, and that's where I just don't understand when it, you know, I've had traumatic experiences as an officer, and I did have to talk to some people, but I just could never see taking my own life. But I learned that, I mean, mental health is nothing to play around with.
I have a question specifically for you.
Okay.
You've been an officer for you said 16 or 17 years, right?
17, yeah.
17 years. So have you ever had an officer come in and it's like, okay, this is a new officer, they're like super happy about being an officer, and certain interactions with the public have kind of turned those people into like, not bad officers, but they're not as, I don't know how to explain it, like excited to, or they're not going out of their way to help people anymore.
I have, you know, you see I used to be the youngest one in my department, but so now I see the younger ones come in and they're very excited about getting out there and, you know, helping people and things like that. But, you know, in the academy, I don't know what makes a person decide to be an officer. I know why I did. It wasn't because, I could drive like that. But the more that I learned about law enforcement, the more I knew I wanted to be in the criminal justice, but working with juveniles. So I don't know why people become officers. Some people become officers, but they may not realize exactly what they're going to see. I was a 911 dispatcher prior to being an officer, and growing up, my parents kept me sheltered. I remember going home and telling them after my first week, y'all kept me sheltered. Y'all shouldn't have done that, because all the calls I answered and different things, suicide, shootings, fighting, a vehicle on fire with people in it, things like that. You know, it was just, you just don't know what you're going to get. And if they don't have the right mindset, just that experience could damage them, which will then damage the future with the public and stuff, because if they can't, you know, if they can't get over whatever experience they've had, then like you said, they're not, you know, their interactions with other people aren't going to be top notch like they need to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I say more educating, and you know, we go through the police academy, but that doesn't show you real life stuff.
Yeah.
So until you see that first deceased body or whatnot, I mean, you know. But there's good moments too with law enforcement. More good than there is negative.
Okay.
Especially working with y'all. It's amazing. Y'all are awesome.
All right. Are there any ending remarks you'd like to make? Or, you know, if this documentary is put out there, anything you'd like anybody to know, new officers, like you can speak to anyone here.
Just that no matter putting on this, you know, vest and the badge or whatnot, you're just the same as everyone else. Now, when you put this on, you're protecting them, and you take the bullet for them.
Yeah.
That's what you took an oath to do. But mainly for the officers to know that, you know, just because you have a badge does not make you better than any civilian or anything like that. And there's always a backstory to what's going on with that person, the civilian side and officer side.
Yeah.
And for them to, you know, be respectful. The officers be respectful and listen to them.
Yeah.
They may need time to cool down because you're arriving and your adrenaline's going because you don't know what you're going to roll up to. But their adrenaline's going because they're in something.
Yeah.
So when you approach them, they may need time to calm down for a minute. If there's not a safety issue, let them just breathe for a minute. Then start talking to them, but talk to them respectfully. And it goes a long way. And that's the officers talking to the people.
All right.
So.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
All right, and we have a former officer here. He doesn't want to disclose his name for private reasons. Now, how long were you in law enforcement?
I did law enforcement for 15 years.
15 years. All right. So he's going to do the community interview. How old are you?
I am 51 years old.
51? Damn. What is your take on police brutality?
My take on it is sometimes I think it's viewed from a different perspective. It depends on who it is and how you're seeing it.
Yeah.
Most of the time, when you see you don't see the whole picture of what happened. I think when you just see it on film or on camera, it's a different perspective. Sometimes you just catch a part of it and you don't see the whole picture.
Yeah.
You don't see the whole totality of the situation.
Yeah.
Does it happen? Yes. Is it like it's presented? A lot of times, no. Is there bad officers? Yes. But I believe there's a lot more good officers than bad officers.
Yeah, I've had many other officers say that they feel as if media really skews it to get more viewership and just really changing what really happened.
I believe, yes. I believe it does. I think to get either, you know, more reaction from people,
Yeah.
more viewership. Like I said before, it does happen, but not exactly how they show it.
Have you ever experienced police brutality?
As an officer, from the point of an officer, no. Some people might say it is, but once you investigate it and you see everything that happened, everything that goes into it, it's not police brutality.
All right. Would you say police brutality is a major issue?
I don't believe it happens as much as people say, but because it's videotaped or people have cameras everywhere and can see, they think it's happening every single day, which is not true. It does happen, yes, but not as often as they portray it, or as often as they see it.
I was told to tell this by the amazing officers I've interviewed before. When they are sent to the scene, they are only told what dispatch says. This means if the person who reported the incident said there was a gun, they have to assume there was one already there. So it's like if they're told that there's a gun on dispatch,
yes,
they have to go
in with the mindset that there is a weapon involved. So when you get there, you're already on edge. You already have to do what you got to do to either disarm somebody, stop somebody from hurting somebody or hurting themselves. Because you don't know why that gun is there.
Exactly.
Is it for protection? Is it to hurt somebody? Is it to hurt themselves? You don't know this. A lot of times people just assume you know what's going on. You don't know. People might call in, so we saw somebody with a gun. Okay, was that person, trying to hurt somebody, hurt themselves, protecting themselves? You don't know. So you go in there with so many scenarios that you don't know.
Exactly.
And that's what makes the job very hard.
And
so that has to do with that. You cure that with a lot of training.
I was also told to tell the people that they're humans too. They make mistakes and can experience empathy in the field. This means if you're respectful and the crime you've committed is something they do, you're probably not going to get the book thrown at you.
It's true. I think a lot of officers do have empathy. I think they go in there to do their job and to do a good job. It's not just a job. They go in there for a reason. They do this job for a reason. And they do care about people, and they do care about the community. And most of the officers that I know, 99 out of 100 officers, I'll tell you, are great officers. They want to help their community. They want to help their neighborhoods, their friends, and that's why they do the job. It's a tough job, but they choose to do it.
All right. And I have some facts here. 1 in 4 officers has suicidal thoughts. The suicide rate of officers is 4 times higher than firefighters. Many officers develop PTSD from seeing bodies or shooting. They go through this way more than the average person. More officers died from suicide than in the line of duty in 2017. 1 in 4 officers suffers with substance abuse, and 20 to 30% have substance abuse issues compared to the under 10% of the general population. Has any of this info changed your views?
A little bit. I didn't know it was that many either, but I believe it, because you do see things that other people don't see. You see dead bodies, you see people who get beat up, people who get stabbed, and it's stuff that you don't see every day.
Exactly.
So you see it, and sometimes you try to cope with it yourself, but sometimes some people do need professional help, and sometimes because that stigma is there, I know if I go get professional help, people will think I'm crazy, which is not true.
Where's your ID?
Which is not true. I believe everybody should get help if they need it, and yes, PTSD can happen to anybody and everybody, even though some people try to say, oh, I'm really strong, that won't happen. When you go somewhere and you see a lot of times like kids are killed in an accident, and then you as an officer, you have kids, a lot of times you see that and you're like, it affects you. It really does. And sometimes once you see something, it's hard to get out of your head. It's not like something like, oh, I'll just forget it or whatever. It doesn't happen that way. It'll stick.
I previously interviewed a mental health officer, and he was saying that many officers believe that if they come forward and get help, it could jeopardize their job. But they don't know that they could get help in private without the department knowing.
That is true. That's true, and it shouldn't affect you when you do go get help, because everybody knows that it's only to help you. It's only to help you and become a better officer. But like you said, yes, if you can get help, without nobody knowing, if that's what you want, get it. You should get it. It comes in very, very, very handy. Me myself, I had professional help, and I can honestly say it works.
It works.
Because I was one of those people that, same thing like you said. Oh, I don't want to tell people I need help because they're gonna think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And then once people think you're crazy, anything you do, oh, he does that because he's crazy.
Exactly.
So, but I went and I got help on my own, and I recommend it to everybody, and not just people, not just law enforcement, but regular people, anybody.
Yeah.
When you need help, go get it. Get it.
Well, thank you so much. And would you like to leave any remarks or anything you'd like to say to the public, officers, someone personal? Just what would you like to leave for the document?
I like to say that I think the public and police officers should, and a lot of them do, work together, especially with minorities. With me myself being a minority, I think working together, speaking to each other, letting the public know how we work.
Yeah.
So this way, when we do our job, they know what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Exactly.
And being transparent.
Yeah.
So there's no hiding anything. Why'd you do that? Well, this is why I do that, because this is how I was trained. This is what happened.
Yeah.
And this way, the public knows what's going on instead of thinking that there's something that law enforcement is hiding, and then they're not. They just got to do their job, and I believe working together will solve a lot of issues.
Well, thank you.
A lot of issues. Alrighty. Thank you.
We enjoyed you.
Tia Grayson.
How old are you, Tia?
I am 16, turning 17 next month.
What's your take on police brutality?
I think it's an issue that shouldn't exist, but unfortunately, as most issues, it does exist by fall of circumstance. I think it's something that has been blown out of proportion by many people, and although it is a very pressing issue and it does affect a lot of people, it still shouldn't be blown to the proportion that it is at this point, because not as many people are affected by it so harshly.
Have you ever experienced this?
Police brutality? No, not in my lifetime. I don't think anyone in my family has either, which is hilarious to say because my mom's from Georgia, so she definitely grew up in the South, and she definitely never had to deal with any of it.
How would you go about fixing this issue if you could?
If I could, it'd be more about the training of police officers. It wouldn't be about necessarily taking away their use of guns. It's more about how they use it, how effective it is, how often they really need to. More like dash cams, and like cams are actually on their person, so you can see the true effect of like what they're doing. Because sometimes they say that they're just defending themselves, and at a certain point you are defending yourself. But when you look at certain objects that actually have no relevance, they don't look like guns at all, are you really defending yourself, or are you sticking by your bias?
Okay. I was told to tell the public this from the officers I previously interviewed. When they are sent out to the scene, they only know what dispatch tells them. This means if the person who called in and reported the incident said there was a gun, they have to assume there was a gun there. So that's why many times they pull up to the scene with their guns drawn already. They're looking to de-escalate the situation as quickly as possible, but if somebody's like yelling at them, like, why do you have the guns drawn? They're just doing that because they were told to have their guns drawn. They're humans as well, and they make mistakes. And they can experience empathy in field. This means if you're respectful and the crime you've committed is something they'd probably do, you're not going to get the book thrown at you. I'm going to tell you some facts now. 1 in 4 officers has suicidal thoughts. The suicide rate of officers is 4 times higher than that of firefighters. Many officers suffer from PTSD from seeing bodies, and the one recurring thing I've been told is seeing children dead, especially, really hits up close to home for officers. More officers died in the year 2017 from suicide than in the line of duty. 20 to 30% of officers abuse alcohol or other substances, compared to the below 20% of the general public. Has any of this information changed your views?
It's changed my views slightly to the point of that I empathize more with them, but at the same time, in the small amount of effects that I've seen of police brutality and their happenings, the whole I'm a human too, I make mistakes, Your mistake shouldn't be killing a
Someone's
child.
Yeah.
Your mistake should be, I drew my weapon and there was no need for me to draw my weapon, and it should just be left at that. Not, I drew my weapon and I emptied my clip into a black child because I thought that they might maybe have a gun. So it helps me empathize with them. I truly didn't know that they were so suicidal. I didn't know that they abused alcohol like that. I do think that is a big issue too. So along with police brutality and with training them better, we should also be looking into HR for them and making sure that they have like therapists or some sort of worker there that is there solely just to make sure that they are okay and that they're feeling all right. And if they're not feeling all right, don't go in that day.
Yeah.
Like, do not carry your weapon with you. Maybe stay, like, if there's another, like, busy work that you can do rather than going out into the field, because at that point, you're not only jeopardizing somebody else's life, but you're jeopardizing your own because you're sacrificing your mental health. And for what? You're not making anyone safer by doing that, so.
Well, thank you, Tia. Are there any remarks you'd like to leave for the documentary? Like for police officers, the public, someone personally, it's up to you.
I'd just like to say to if any police officers were like watching this or something, I'd just like for them to know that like the media and everybody might say that you're doing a terrible job, but for the ones that are like good, we thank you, we salute you, you're doing great. We make sure that like we want you to be known that you're great. And the few bad apples, like, kind of making it really bad for everybody else. So you can understand why on our side we might be like, hey, that's an issue, that's a really big issue because, you know, like, one time too many.
Yeah.
It only takes one time for us to be like, okay, this is an actual problem, we should fix it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Tia.